Hey people, buenos dias, buenas noches, actually. Um, it's Malika. I was about to slip into Spanish. Uh, okay, before like now I've gotten all of the how to voting things out of the way. Now I want to talk about politics in a way that lay people can understand. And I want to start with this story. It's been boy resting on my spirit, plaguing my thoughts for days now. And I don't know how many of you have heard it, but that New York Times piece. I want y'all to look this up. I'm not going to read it to you, but I want you to look it up when you have a minute uh, and read it because it's so important. You find it. Jeez Louise. Here it is. Why can't I? Okay, there's the title of the piece. 8 million have slipped into poverty since May as federal aid has dried up. Two new studies show the effect of the emergency $2 trillion package known as the CARES Act and what happened when the money ran out in May. Now, I want to tell y'all a story before I get to this next part. Uh, I I was just talking to my sister and she doesn't remember anything. And I have one of these sticky memories, kind of freaks people out. I have a very long memory. I remember so many things, especially things that stick out that are vivid to me. And it's 8 or 9. And this part my sister remembers because it may sound odd, but we kind of grew up in the bowling alley. And we spent 3 days a week, at least evenings a week in the bowling alley. My mom was in the league, my dad was in the league, and then they were in a couples league. And so there was this big old game room in the bowling alley. That was back when you could smoke indoors. So especially on the nights my dad bowled, it was just a cloud of smoke. I had chronic bronchitis. So, we stayed in the kids' room. Problem with the kids' room is, I mean, it was big, but there were a bunch of like baby toys. Me and my sister were only 16 months apart, so we're about the same age. My brother's older, 2 years older than me. So, there were always either kids that were older, closer to his age, or really young kids. So me and my sister never had anybody really to hang with in those rooms. It was so boring. We weren't allowed to leave the bowling alley. Period. That was the rule. But one night, we were at the bowling alley. This girl shows up. That was my age. She was in my class. I think I was in the third grade, I want to say. And her name was Tammy. I'll never forget Tammy. I think about Tammy often, especially when I hear things like this. And she, we were playing, we were bored, and so there were these double glass doors as you're going out, and so this little space where the payphone was, and there's like gumball machines, and so we were hanging out in that little space, and in the parking lot was a station wagon. Now, for some reason, we were obsessed with station wagons. My aunt Nancy had a station wagon, and I mean, anytime we could play in a station wagon, that was the bee's knees. Well, Tammy, she said that was their station wagon parked across the way in the parking lot. We're like, "Ooh, you got a station wagon?" She's like, "You want to go play in it?" And me and my sister looked like, "Ooh, we're not allowed to leave this area," But it was a station wagon, so we went. It wasn't far; it was just across the parking lot. So we get in the station wagon, and I remember the back was laid out, and it had like blankets and pillows, like a bed, and then inside, it was at the time where McDonald's was running that promotion where they had those plastic spaceships that you could open and close, and their card was filled with like Happy Meal boxes and those plastic spaceships you stuck the stickers on. And I remember, like, I was like, wow, y'all get McDonald's all the time. And you get to sleep in here. That's cool that your mom lets you, play and have your bed in here. And she was just like, oh, well, my mom works at McDonald's. So yeah, we basically only eat McDonald's. It's like, that is so cool. I'm like, and so she let y'all play in the car like this. And she's like, no, we live here. It's like, what? And she's like, yeah. She's like, we used to live in West Virginia. Just matter of fact, little kid. And she was like, until this point, she was like, yeah, our dad used to beat my mom up and beat us up. And then a couple weeks ago in the middle of the night, she just packed us up and we drove all night long and we landed here. And the bowling alley lets us park the car out here in the parking lot. That's the first homeless person I ever met, was a little girl, my age. And it wasn't until then that I noticed she had a cut under her eye. And then I remember I didn't say anything. I was like, no, you don't. She was like, yeah. And in my mind, I still remember in my mind as an 8-year-old, I thought, no, they don't let little kids sleep outside. Little kids aren't allowed to sleep outside. They need like a bed and a roof. Kids aren't allowed to sleep outside. They don't let kids sleep outside. I'm thinking adults, like, wouldn't it be illegal for a kid to have to sleep in a car? Couldn't even fathom it at 8 years old. But we do. And as an adult, as I've grown, I realize that we are the they. And so when I see a story like this, and then Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, right? He's responsible for bringing bills to the floor and having them voted on, right? He laughed in his debate with Amy McGrath in Kentucky when she was like, "What have you been doing to help, provide relief for people in the midst of this pandemic? People who've been laid off, 30% of small businesses have shuttered. All those people working there, they are unemployed now, and these businesses aren't opening back up. So you've got people who have been working for decades, who have a home, who have cars, who are now faced with living in poverty. Kids living in cars. And yet Mitch McConnell has rushed. Oh, the Senate couldn't come back for any negotiations on the HEROES Act, which the House passed back in May. No, to rush through a Supreme Court nominee while the election is going, because they want a conservative-leaning court that can bail them out if they lose this election, that can overturn Obamacare, that can, their wish list. But right now, we're in a freaking emergency, and that money, I must reiterate, does not belong to fucking Mitch McConnell, okay? It belongs to all those people that have been paying taxes for years that are now unemployed and facing homelessness. I need Americans to get a lot more angry about this, because I get a sense that people, and I mean, commentators say this, even Democrats in the Senate will say, well, they're going to get this nominee through. That Judge Amy Barrett, if you've watched the Supreme Court hearings, you know what? I don't see that fact, okay? I don't see that in every single way. It's bullshit that they're trying to push her through. But the biggest point is that this is not like millions of Americans just decided, well, I'm tired of working. This pandemic is Trump's fault and the Republicans who have enabled him. The House passed the CARES Act in May. And if you read that article from the New York Times, it shows that it kept millions of people out of poverty. It kept millions of people out of poverty. I think they said something like 28 million people out of poverty. That stimulus check and those benefits. And then when those 2 months in March and April, jumping in, we're like, oh, well, that's good enough. We've been sheltered for too long. The economy's starting to rock. We need to get back to work. They didn't do any contact tracing. They didn't do anything to stop the spread of the virus. So all those things that were supposed to happen while we were shut down, while people were getting paid, so that they didn't go out and keep spreading it, so that the government and our public health officials could do what they needed to do to trace and contain the virus. Yeah, they didn't do that part. And so when Nancy Pelosi and the House realized, okay, this thing is going to keep going because these effers don't know what the fuck they're doing, okay? So in May, the House passed the HEROES Act. One, hazard pay for the essential workers that had no choice. They couldn't go home. We needed them in the hospitals. We needed them everywhere else to help us, deal with this. They need hazard pay. All those nurses, everybody that had to be there. No. $2.2 trillion is too fucking much. 4 trillion, they passed more than that just to give to the wealthy. Okay, and for no reason. It's not like they needed it. People need it. And I need y'all to connect this to the human thing, okay? I mean, we've gotten so inured to so much fucked upness in this country. But when we're saying 8 million people in just the last 4 months have slipped into poverty, that means they were already on the edge. They were living poor, as Reverend Barber had pointed out. It's not like they weren't poor. They've just fallen even further into poverty to where they're going to lose their homes. Millions of people have missed their mortgage payments for at least the last couple of months and are facing eviction. And those taxpayer dollars that they have already paid is what Mitch McConnell was saying. I'll give you $500 billion, if that. 8 million. And that's just a part of the people. And that's just right now over the last month, because 880,000 people applied for unemployment last week. 880,000 doesn't say million, thousand. That's Tammy's and her parents, and the effects that it has on kids who have slipped into poverty. They talk about that. Please read that. Read that article. Look it up, because it's a long piece. I'm not going to read it to you, but there is so much in it. And we are lacking so much compassion. And if you can't, 2.5 million children are included in that number. When I was 8, I couldn't fathom that adults would let kids sleep outside. Like, that's got to be illegal. Lord have mercy.